Andrea mentioned, I am Adriana Gonzalez. I'm a social worker here at UCSD in the Movement Disorder Center. And so my role is to really support the people living with Parkinson's and their family members as they navigate everything there is to navigate when you're living with Parkinson's disease, including the caregiver experience or the care partner experience or the family member experience, whatever your relationship is to someone with Parkinson's. We think it's really important that you not only take care of yourself, but that you recognize ways in which supports might be available to you. So this is why, our kickoff is dedicated to you so that we make sure that we're taking care of everybody who's impacted by Parkinson's. So I'm super glad that you took some time out of your day to be here, either live with us, or if you're watching the recording, taking the time to view the recording of our talk today. And so, as I mentioned, my main goal is to increase the tools in your toolbox to help you cope with providing care to a loved one. And we do that by identifying resources that can support you in implementing these strategies. So many times when I'm working with family members, with loved ones with Parkinson's, one of the things that we talk about is, we don't know what we don't know. This is our first time journeying through this. So we're not sure what questions to ask or what resources are available to us or to me. And so that really is the goal for me of today's conversation, is that you have a starting point, whether you need it now or whether you need these supportive resources in the future. You know where to start, you know who to call. And so what is a caregiver? And do you even identify as one? And this is a big, conversation that we have in the Parkinson's community, because some loved ones of someone with Parkinson's, they don't feel like a caregiver or they don't identify as one. It's why sometimes in some literature you'll see care partner, or in others you'll see caregiver, or you'll see family member. And so a lot of those terms are used interchangeably because we recognize that not everybody identifies as a caregiver, especially at the beginning. Because at the beginning, when somebody's newly diagnosed with Parkinson's, they may not need a lot of support. The medications are working beautifully. They are able to manage their symptoms really well. And so a lot of family members feel like, yeah, they have Parkinson's, but they're still able to be very independent. So I'm not a caregiver. I'm not providing care. And so really today it's talking about how even if you're not providing care, you're still providing support to your loved one. You're still there as uh, a member of their team that's helping them understand what some of the next steps are. So officially, a caregiver is someone who provides social or physical support to an aging loved one or to a person who has a disability. And there's two distinct categories of caregivers. There's a professional caregiver. So that's somebody that you hire, that's coming into your home, that you're paying, or maybe who's volunteering, but not a family member, to provide some care. And then there's family caregivers. And so Melissa from the Southern Caregiver Resource Center will really talk about the types of supports we have available in San Diego to family caregivers. And I've been working at the UCSD Movement Disorders Center as part of the team for 6 years now, about 6.5 years. And I would say 9 times out of 10, the people that are providing care are the majority family. So we work a lot with family caregivers. And that's pretty common, not just in Parkinson's disease, but according to the AARP, 53 million people were providing unpaid care in the United States in 2020. And the person receiving that care can be a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a neighbor. And so I've actually had all these types of caregivers come through and talk to me. Most of the time it's a spouse, sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's a sibling. A lot of times when people don't have a lot of local family support, it might be a neighbor, it might be a really good friend that's coming to all the medical appointments. And so people with Parkinson's disease, their support systems all are very unique and unique to them. And so it is important to recognize, even if somebody is not a member of your immediate family or extended family, friends, neighbors, those are all part of our support network, all part of our support system. And there's different types of caregivers. There's a crisis caregiver. But in Parkinson's disease, in our community, what we're mostly working with are long-term caregivers. As some of you may know, the Parkinson's disease journey is decades long and filled with change. And so a lot of the caregivers that I'm working with, are in for as a caregiver for a good amount of time. I also work with long distance caregivers. A lot of families have adult children who have moved out of the state, some who have moved out of the country. And so I'm often helping navigate or facilitate communication with adult children who might not be local, but who still want to be involved in the care of their loved one and who still want to provide some support to the other family members that are providing the primary source of care. And then we have what we call our sandwich caregivers. So this can be people who, let's say someone's a young onset Parkinson's and their spouse still is working. And so they're managing their full-time job and providing care to their loved one. Also, we might have someone who is retired, but they're caring for their loved one, but they're also caring for their grandchildren and supporting their adult children with their childcare needs. So there's a lot of people who are navigating a lot of different tasks and roles, which add to the stress and which add to the risk of developing what we call caregiver burnout. And so I like to give the examples of caregiving because a lot of people will tell me, well, I don't identify as a caregiver because I'm not helping with, they're still pretty independent and I'm not helping with the bathing and grooming. Or, I don't have to manage their medications and I don't have to watch every move because they're still pretty mobile and can manage a lot of their things on their own. And caregiving is really a spectrum. And so even if you are playing a supportive role as a companion, as a spouse, as a daughter, that is providing care, emotional support, and companionship. And sometimes I use the analogy of driving in a car. So when a person with Parkinson's is first diagnosed, they're the ones in the driver's seat. They're managing their medications, they're providing the history to their doctor. They are still kind of navigating their life without a lot of support. And maybe as the loved one, we're sitting in the back seat. We're along for the ride. Maybe we're not giving a lot of information during the doctor's appointments, and we're just there as emotional support. But over time, because Parkinson's is progressive and it changes, we might find that we have to jump up to the front seat, to the passenger seat. Because now maybe we're giving some direction. Make a right here, make a left there. Let's call this doctor. Let's follow up on that appointment. Oh, actually, remember yesterday you almost fell. Your blood pressure went really low. So we're providing collateral medical information. Person with Parkinson's is still managing their medications, still the one mostly giving the history during the appointment, but we're a little more involved. Maybe we're doing a little more of the food shopping and prepping. Maybe we're doing some of the transportation, especially on a bad day. And as the disease progresses and maybe our loved one is experiencing difficulties with communication, with speech, with cognition, or there's more slowness or difficulty recalling information, that's when we switch. And maybe now as the care partner, we are in the driver's seat because we're giving most of the history, or we're the ones sending the MyChart message, or actually managing the medication and setting the timers. And so I use that analogy just to kind of remind people that this is the role of the caregiver is ever changing. And so as we know, change is hard. And so let's make sure before we even get there to driving the car, let's have some people who are tailgating behind us or that we have on speed dial that can help and support us as we navigate or take on more responsibility. And I talk about that because when I work with caregivers and family members, we do talk about how a caregiver's physical, emotional, spiritual well-being is all challenged by this experience. There's physical symptoms that can come along with providing care to a loved one, like fatigue, like sleep, like pain. Sleep in particular, if people with Parkinson's tend to have a lot of difficulty with sleep. And as their disease progresses, they are less steady on their feet. And so a lot of times I talk to spouses who say, we still share a room and my spouse is up 3 or 4 times a night, either having to use the bathroom or they have restless leg syndrome or they just can't sleep. And so I'm up. So I can't sleep. They can't sleep, I can't sleep. And so that's really going to impact, it really has a snowball effect on our ability and our quality of life and our ability to navigate our activities of daily living. It can exacerbate mental health. So if someone already has a history of depression, anxiety, and they're not sleeping and they're worried about the future or they're worried about finances, that can really ramp up some of these symptoms of depression and anxiety. Or if, you were managing your symptoms really well with medication and therapy, but now you don't have time to go to therapy, then that really is going to impact a well-being. Emotional well-being is another one. A lot of people will tell me, well, I don't feel depressed. I don't, have anxiety. I don't feel a sense of panic, but I do feel angry or I do feel guilty that I'm having to make these decisions for them. Or I do feel a sense of ambiguous loss, which I'll kind of talk a little bit more in the next slide. And so all of those emotions are kind of uncomfortable ones that people feel aren't appropriate, or sometimes they feel like they get stuck in them a little bit. And so it's important to kind of talk about this can happen, right? You can feel this. And then financial stress. I always want to acknowledge the astronomical cost of care, particularly in San Diego, that makes it really difficult for people to hire outside professional caregivers. For a lot of people, maybe they can make it work for a few months, but for most people, it's not sustainable because it's so expensive without long-term care insurance coverage. And then some people experience a loss of income. Again, for example, if you're caring for a loved one and maybe you run your own business or you didn't plan to retire for another couple years, but now you have to provide care, that's a loss of income that can create a lot of stress and worry, and that can really sit heavy on our shoulders. And so, kind of like I mentioned, there's a couple of terms that we use in the therapeutic setting, like ambiguous loss, like anticipatory grief, that are very common experiences when caring for somebody with a neurodegenerative disorder like Parkinson's. Anticipatory grief just means that sometimes we get caught up or we experience grief and loss for a situation that's yet to come. So we're anticipating, gosh, if, it's so sad that, my loved one is having trouble walking, what's it going to be when they can't walk so well anymore by themselves, or they love hiking and I'm really sad to acknowledge that there might be a day that they can't hike anymore, bike ride anymore. And so that's an experience that people with Parkinson's might experience, but it's also something that caregivers can feel as well. And then ambiguous loss, that's another term that we use in therapeutic settings, and that is describing the experience of grieving the loss of someone who is still physically present. That happens a lot in Parkinson's in the middle to later stages of the disease, especially if your loved one is experiencing some cognitive changes, where I've had spouses tell me, I'm having to make really difficult decisions about selling our house or about, moving into an assisted living. And I'm feeling sad because these are decisions that my spouse used to be able to help me with, and he's not able to. And I'm really feeling that loss. Or, my loved one is experiencing a lot of cognitive changes and it's actually changed his personality a little bit. And I'm sad. I miss that. He's still here, but I miss that person that we used to be able to, do read the newspaper together and talk about it. And so those two experiences are unique to diseases like Parkinson's and dementia. And so we like to talk about it because that can elicit some normal and common reactions like anger, frustration, denial, isolation, sadness, fear. All of those feelings can come up. Again, feelings that most of us are not comfortable feeling. So I try to remind people you don't always have to be grateful that it isn't worse. I think gratitude is a beautiful practice to be able to stay present minded, to be able to focus, on the things that are going well. But if you're having a moment where today I'm just angry that this is happening to them, that's okay too. It's more about feeling what you're feeling and finding a way to move through it instead of kind of pushing it aside and saying, oh, here I go again. I should just be grateful. It's like, today we don't have to be grateful. Today we can feel whatever we're feeling and try to find an activity that's going to help. And I'm going to try to find an activity that's going to help me move through that as best as I can. So giving ourselves grace to feel what we need to feel, because Parkinson's disease, it is hard. It's a disease that does create a lot of challenges for people. It is progressive, as you know, and it can impact cognition and communication. So you might find that your loved one has more difficulty following instructions or has challenges with problem solving, changes in their mood. And I mention that because that creates a situation where it pushes on your patience. Something that maybe used to take 30 minutes to get out the door might now take 2 hours. And so 2 hours out of the day of a caregiver that's really busy is a big chunk. And so it's okay to recognize that frustration. And I talk about these changes because it's also important to maybe get some support, some training, kind of learn new communication skills and strategies to help navigate that. Because I call it new tools in our toolbox, because most of us have lived, long enough to develop some skills to cope with challenging situations. But what happens when those skills aren't working anymore? And, we find ourselves losing our patience more often. It means that we need more tools. We need more things to kind of help us navigate, what's going on. Because one thing we know about Parkinson's is that it's always changing. How your loved one presents today is not how they're going to present next year or in 2 years or in 5 years. It's always changing. And in our support groups, we talk about this sometimes, where just when we've gotten to a space of, okay, this feels manageable. This feels like something that I feel like we have a good routine here. Parkinson's will throw a curveball and kind of shift everything again. And here we go, having to adapt to change again. And adapting isn't easy. It requires skills and tools and strategies. Insight is really important when learning to adapt to change. Reminding yourself, like, gosh, this is hard for me. This is getting harder. I am finding that I have less time for myself, and that is making me less patient. Okay, what do we do with that? Where do we go from here? Where do we ask for help? Naming our feelings always helps with coping. Gosh, I am so angry today, or I'm so frustrated, I'm so sad today, because these are decisions that my spouse used to help me make, and now I feel like I'm alone in them. And I remind care partners and caregivers the journey's full of uncertainty. There is no playbook, there's no manual of what is absolutely going to happen or a timeline. It is always, here's what's next, and you don't know what's next until you're in it. And so that's why we talk about creating a roadmap, focusing on what we know and what we can control, learning about what are some of the changes that might happen. I call it peeking around the corner, kind of peeking around the corner a little bit to see what other things can change that I should be aware of. If we live in a 2-story or 3-story home, stairs will likely become really difficult. Is there a plan for that? Is there a solution? Can we afford the solution? What will that look like? And so that's called, creating a roadmap. Just trying to outline some of the twists and turns that might happen, and then some of the supports that might be there along the way to help you make some difficult decisions. I talk a lot about coping skills, and people will tell me, well, what exactly are coping skills? They're just activities or strategies that we use to get through a stressful situation. Exercise, taking a bath, giving ourselves a pep talk, taking 3 deep breaths. Those are all emotion focused coping skills. So coping skills that we're bringing into our life in order to self-regulate, in order to calm our body and our mind, to take a deep breath, to take a step back. That reduces our emotional distress and allows us to work through potential solutions. Maybe I can't do this alone anymore. Maybe I need to call the Southern Caregiver Resource Center for some of their resources. Maybe I do. Maybe my daughter has been asking, like, how can I help? How can I help? And I say, no, we're good. Maybe it is time to ask for help and say, actually, I do need help. I don't know yet what that can look like, but I'm still working through it to figure out, how you can help me and how that might be helpful to our situation. I like to throw 50 ways to take a break in there because caregivers, care partners are busy. Even if they're not working full time, even if they're not providing childcare to their grandchildren, even if you're not providing care to anybody else, providing care to someone with Parkinson's, particularly in the, middle to advancing stages, does take up a lot of time. And sometimes my caregivers will tell me, Adriana, I don't have time. I don't have time for self-care. I don't have time to go get a massage. I don't have time to see a therapist. But maybe you have time to call a friend and check in with somebody for 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe you have time to, on a beautiful day like today, get outside, sit under a tree, and just spend 5 minutes in the shade, enjoying kind of that natural breeze that we're fortunate to get in San Diego. Maybe you have time to pour yourself an amazing cup of coffee and sit in your favorite chair and really drink it lovingly, or a cup of tea or something that feels nourishing. So there's so many different ways to take a quick break in your really busy day to calm your nervous system down and to remind yourself that you're okay. Here, I'm gonna list out a couple of other things that can help, or areas that you can look into if you're building your roadmap and want to know kind of, where do I start, where do I turn, who do I talk to? If your loved one is a patient of the Movement Disorder Center here at UCSD and you want to talk through some of these resources, I am available to you as a social worker on the team. That's my role, is to be available to caregivers, spouses, people with Parkinson's, to talk through some of these resources. If you're not a patient of UCSD, then you can utilize some of these websites to see what other types of resources are available to you. But having information, education is key, because increased knowledge of Parkinson's can improve symptom recognition. And so that can be through our local Parkinson's Association of San Diego, through national organizations like the Parkinson's Foundation, like the Michael J. Fox Foundation, PMDA. There's a lot of Parkinson's organizations, both local and nationally, that are there providing information and education. Melissa will talk about what the Southern Caregiver Resource Center offers. Support groups, meeting other people who are experiencing a similar situation, builds community and emotional support. It allows for us to say, oh, okay, I'm not alone. Support groups, there are support groups specific to caregivers and care partners that are available in person and virtually. And there's also, if you're not ready for a support group, and maybe you're introvert and that feels really overwhelming to have to meet a bunch of strangers, the Parkinson's Association does have a pretty awesome mentorship program where you can connect one-on-one with somebody who's either living with Parkinson's, or is a caregiver to someone with Parkinson's. Therapy. Therapy can help build insight and provide a safe space to explore all the emotions that come up with navigating the caregiver journey. A lot of people feel alone with their worries and don't want to share that with their loved one with Parkinson's because they don't want to worry them. And so participating in therapy is a really helpful way to kind of talk through what you're worried about and to, again, create that roadmap. Training. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we don't know what we don't know. A lot of people coming to the caregiver role without having a lot of training about what that means. San Diego State has a free program for caregivers. The Parkinson's Foundation has a partner program. And the training programs, it's not so much like a support group, it's more to give you some tangible skills so that you can navigate whether it's difficult behavior or if you're now supporting your loved one out of the car and with transfers. There's ways to do that safely so that you don't injure yourself. And then supportive services. Sometimes what you're going through doesn't have to do with Parkinson's, and you're needing supports in other areas, financial or food insecurity, or just any number of things we might be going through. The County of San Diego has an aging and independence services program. There's elder help here in San Diego that provides a lot of support to older adults over 60. And again, there's 211 San Diego that you can dial from your phone, and you can ask about any service or resources, either for you or a family member that you might be interested in. I like to remind people religion and spirituality can be really important kind of pillar for people in order to navigate everything that comes with being a caregiver. It can help create a sense of peace and surrender. And so if you have a local church, really finding support with them, talking about Parkinson's with them, because there's likely somebody else within your church group that also is navigating Parkinson's. If you can't go to service anymore, finding out if there's virtual services available. And then, many hospital organizations have chaplains available if that's still something that you're exploring, or you don't feel called to a particular religion, talking through to a chaplain to talk through that spirituality element can be really helpful. Mindfulness practice, so building skills and practicing gratitude can reduce anxiety by staying present focused. There's some great apps, there's some great in-person classes, there's some great virtual classes, all that information there. Sometimes for a lot of us, it's like, "Ugh, I'm tired of talking, I'm tired of thinking through everything I'm feeling." And creative art therapy can be really helpful in releasing some of our emotion without having to talk. Journaling, painting, collage, creating music in a therapeutic setting can all be really helpful when experiencing kind of difficult challenges. Walking, we say it a lot for people with Parkinson's: movement, movement, movement. Caregivers too. Movement, movement, movement. Walking, yoga, hiking, dance, YouTube video, a 15-minute workout, things like acupuncture, massage, Reiki. If you don't have time for those things, when I'm really stressed, I'll just put my favorite song on and, dance in the living room just to kind of release some of that. And so a reminder, when in doubt, reach out. And that can be reaching out to the social worker on the team, reaching out to a really good friend, reaching out to a community resource. Support and mentorship is available to you from a very amazing, lively San Diego Parkinson's disease community. We are very fortunate to have such a strong community here in San Diego. Your care team, that's us, me, your doctor, your nurse. We're here to support you throughout your loved one's disease trajectory. So never feel like, oh, it's their medical appointment. I can't ask about resources for me. No, we treat everybody, the entire family. That's why we have an interdisciplinary team here at UCSD. And then, as part of that roadmap, have support in place to navigate the hard moments, but also to celebrate the good ones because there's still good moments. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. That was wonderful and such a good reminder, just in general, taking care of ourselves. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Melissa, who's a community educator, and I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I will go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me here. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much Andrea, Adriana for the wonderful reminders. And also thank you so much to UCSD's Parkinson and Other Movement Disorders Center. Definitely wonderful resources, care, and everything for the families and the people who have Parkinson's disease. So I'm going to get started with my presentation. Again, my name is Melissa Favela, and I am Southern Caregivers Resource Center Community Educator. And here at Southern Caregiver Resource Center, if you're not familiar with us, our mission is caring for those who care for others. So we focus on family caregivers. And I know Adriana did a wonderful job and really putting an emphasis on who's a family caregiver, even though they may not identify as family caregivers. So I will go ahead and talk a little bit more about what we offer to the community. And I'll go through the background information of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, also a little bit more information on the other CRCs in California, who qualifies for our services and what those services are. So a little bit of background information on us. We are the leading nonprofit organization in San Diego and Imperial counties, providing free supportive services to family caregivers. So as you see in the image in the map, that pink shaded area, those are the areas that we service. So we serve the southernmost part of California. And we were established in 1987. So we are celebrating 36 years of these free supportive services to family caregivers. And again, we are a nonprofit organization. What that means is that our services are free for those who qualify in the community. Now, a little bit more information and something that I like to mention all of the time because I think it's a wonderful service for the community is that Southern Caregiver Resource Center is actually part of a larger network of CRCs in California. There are 11 of us total, including us as CRC, and California is really the only state in the nation that has these support networks for family caregivers, which is, of course, something that we know there's a big need for, right? We saw the statistics that Adriana provided from AARP. There are a lot of caregivers, millions of caregivers. So at least we know that in California, let's say if you have, if you live here and you care for someone here, but then you also have like Adriana was mentioning, adult children, let's say in the Bay Area, right? If they are part of the caregiving team, they can be connected to the nearest CRC in their area as well. So all they have to do is go onto this website, www.caregivercalifornia.org, and they can plug in their zip code and they'll be connected to the nearest CRC, right? So this is, again, a wonderful resource. We are part of that larger network, so we are always happy to share this wonderful information with whoever we can. So let's move on to who qualifies for our services. And of course, I'll go into detail as to what those services are. But first, I want to mention who qualifies, right? Like Adriana said, and I'm going to reference Adriana's presentation because it was so wonderful, so full of really important information, right? So because there is there isn't such a general understanding of who a family caregiver is, or because not a lot of people identify as family caregivers, maybe not yet, but just to mention who qualifies for our services, we have two main qualifiers, right? So anyone who is caring for someone who suffered a cognitive impairment after the age of 18. So they suffered this cognitive impairment after they were adults. Okay, that's one. And two is anyone who is caring for a frail older adult who is 60 years or older. Okay, that's the second one. So when we say frail older adult, that's ambiguous, right? And that's on purpose. We're trying to keep it that way because it's, you could be helping, as Adriana mentioned, with kind of backseat support, right? Being there, offering emotional support, maybe. It could be also a little bit more involved. Right now, we're driving, we're taking care of their medications, we are focusing on other tasks, their ADLs, right? And 60 years or older is, part of that frail older adult definition that we use. So these are our main two qualifiers. A lot of the times I get questions as to, well, do we need to have a certain income? No. We don't look at your income. Again, these are our two only qualifiers. Sometimes we also get questions, well, what if I'm already receiving, help maybe from UCSD, right? What if I'm already receiving resources from the county? That's awesome. We want you to receive help from multiple places. So you still qualify for our resources if you fit in between in either of these two qualifiers. So that is the wonderful thing about us, right? We want people to have as many resources as possible. So really, these are our only two qualifiers, okay? So let's move on to what are those services. This is really where I want to spend a little bit more time and give you more information as to how we help family caregivers. So let's say we have a family caregiver who comes to us, and usually when they come to us is because it's really when they really need help, right? They don't really know where else to go. Maybe they're full hands-on as a caregiver and they need help, right? So when they qualify for our services, they are paired up with a family consultant. Family consultants are professionals, they're master level professionals that assess that caregiver's individual needs, and they create an individualized caregiver plan. What that means is that this family consultant will talk to the family caregiver, and because we know that each caregiving journey is very different, right? There aren't any that are the same. The family consultant will assess the needs at that time. Now, as Adriana mentioned, right, for example, for Parkinson's, it is a condition, it is a disease that's progressive, and a lot can happen in all of those years of care. So that caregiver plan that is designed initially is not set in stone, right? We encourage family caregivers to go back to their family consultant as frequent as they need it, and say, hey, you know what, this has changed. How can I change my caregiver plan, right? And that is absolutely fine because we know that things change as time goes on. So thankfully, that caregiver plan can be adjusted as needs change. Now, another wonderful thing is that we offer support groups. These support groups are professionally facilitated by a state licensed counselor, and these groups help create a network of peers, right? These peers can be a source of support, maybe bounce off ideas off of them. And you can also create this safe space via the support group by talking about the challenges, but also the wins, right? When it comes to caregiving. So these support groups are available in English or Spanish, in person or virtual. We also have individual counseling. A lot of times we have family caregivers who are not ready, or maybe they just don't want to share with a support group, and that's absolutely fine. We respect that. So that's why we offer individual counseling with the counselor, right? And in these individual sessions, the caregiver can really talk about anything related to caregiving challenges, right? Maybe they need emotional support, they need skills, they need to find strategies, right, to cope more effectively with their role as a caregiver. And again, these individual counseling sessions are also available in English or Spanish, in person or virtual. Now, a lovely resource that I love to mention is our legal and financial consultation. So what this is let's say if the family consultant, after talking to the caregiver, says, you know what, you could really benefit from talking to an attorney or a financial planner to figure out, you know, if the care receiver qualifies for public assistance programs, or, you know, maybe even the family caregiver says, hey, you know what, I need help with powers of attorney or financial planning. Well, then what we provide is we pay for 1 hour of this consultation, right? With a vetted attorney or a vetted financial planner. And sure, it is 1 hour, which is not maybe gonna cover everything that the caregiver needs, but that's, you know, maybe $200, $300 that the caregiver is not paying out of pocket, and they're getting their questions answered by a professional, right? By someone who has the legal backing of giving them advice. So really, I think this is a wonderful resource that we offer. Now, if the family caregiver decides to move on with this or keep going with this attorney or financial planner, then that is, you know, on them to continue that. But we do cover that first hour. And really, a lot of the times, that 1 hour is all the family caregiver needs. We do encourage them to prepare for this appointment so that they can really get as much information as possible from this 1 hour. Now, of course, we have a really big education and training department. This is my department, our team. We offer a variety of classes throughout San Diego and Imperial counties. But really, we also do a lot of virtual presentations. We know that because of COVID, most of it, if not all of it, went virtual. So that modality has also stayed. So we are happy to do in-person or virtual classes. You know, we offer them as requested, or we also have our regular classes that we offer virtually, right? So again, these are classes that discuss a variety of topics related to caregiving, how to help caregivers manage their caregiving role better, you know, whatever it might be. It might be, you know, taking care of themselves, right? That is a very big one. Or, you know, maybe recommendations on how to care for the person that they are caring for, right? So, of course, we always have that focus of self-care, because if the caregiver is having a hard time and they're trying to be, you know, constant in their caregiving, they are gonna suffer, right? So we don't want that. We always want to take care of the caregiver. And of course, our education classes are in English and in Spanish as well. And as I mentioned, they are available in person or virtual. So I also want to mention that we offer these evidence-based and culturally adaptive classes for those kind of longer term caregiving conditions, right? For example, people who are caring for someone who has memory loss, Alzheimer's, or another form of dementia. And we know that with Parkinson's, memory loss is something that might happen as it progresses, right? So these TLC and Calma classes are specially designed for family caregivers to find maybe new strategies, new coping skills, because this is very challenging, right? We just have to say it, and it prevents the family caregiver to go into isolation, depression, right? Again, everything with the focus of self-care. So our TLC class is in English, and our Calma class is in Spanish. Okay, so if anybody is interested, we do ask for registration because we want to know who's going to be there. We want to respect the caregiver's privacy, right? But these, again, are free of charge. They're available in English and in Spanish, virtual or in person. We, again, because of the virtual modality, we also have these really accessible mini training videos, if you will. They're in English and Spanish. These are completely virtual because they're animated, but we designed them to make them really easy to watch and to recall, because when we're caregiving for someone, we already know that our time is limited, right? I'm not going to sit down and maybe watch an hour, 2 hours of training videos. That would be awesome, right? I'm sure a lot of caregivers would love that, but sometimes there isn't time, right? Or a lot of the times there isn't time. So we designed these short videos. They're about 15 minutes each. Again, we have them in English and Spanish, where they discuss different topics, right? Safety in the home, managing challenging behaviors, preparing for a doctor's appointments. Like Adriana said, right? When we go to doctor's appointments with the person that we're caring for, sometimes we don't necessarily feel encouraged to ask about ourselves, right? It's always on them. So really, when we prepare for a doctor's appointments, we can watch this video, and we can also include, hey, you know what? I'm the caregiver and I'm feeling like I need help. What can I do, right? What services are available for me? So these videos can really complement what Adriana was mentioning for family caregivers. And last but not least, our respite program. We do offer respite here at SCRC. We know that the need for respite, as Adriana was mentioning in San Diego, is great. It's much needed. And the respite that we offer is designed for temporary support. It's short-term, it's supplemental, right? And this respite is there to relieve the caregiver from constant care. So a lot of our, people who approach us, family caregivers, say, well, I am receiving help from my HSS, but I feel like I still need help, right? I still need support. I still need time for myself. Okay, well, then maybe we can figure out if they qualify for the respite that we offer. Now, I do want to mention here that to qualify for respite, family caregivers still need to go through, our general qualifications. If they qualify for our services, and they need to go through intake and talk to the family consultant, they need to go through that process to see if they qualify for respite. A lot of the times, people need respite in the moment, but unfortunately, we are not able to accommodate if it's an emergency, right? We need to know the needs of the care receivers. So really, we want to provide the best services possible. So we do ask if you need respite, we do ask that you go through the process. But again, we do have this service available. And just as a summary, these are our services. Additionally, we do have little libraries in our offices. So if you like physical books, right, if you want to check out books, we have that available. And then, of course, we have online resources. If you are, again, if you're short on time, or if online information is just more accessible to you, we do have our iCare portal, where you can find a lot of free information. I cannot stress this enough. We're not just about the services that we offer or the classes. We have a lot of free information where a lot of the times, for example, our podcast, we partner with other organizations that also serve family caregivers, right? In our podcast, that's called Let's Talk Caregiving. We release an episode a month. We invite guests that really have experience, and that they themselves offer services to family caregivers. So really, we don't only just offer services, but also resources, right? You can also sign up to our digital newsletter. That's where you can get updates of, the classes that we're having, to see if you want to sign up for them, or, the most recent podcast, who's the guest, things like that, where you can get, again, free information. And you can also follow us on our social network. This is also a great way of getting resources and information. For example, for our Spanish-speaking community, through Instagram, we invite family caregivers that, just share their stories. Really, we want to normalize that caregiving is something that happens. It looks different for everyone, right? Like Adriana said, some caregivers are in that sandwich generation. So they're not just caring maybe for an elderly parent, but they're also, raising children. So we really want to normalize caregiving. We want to tell everyone that this happens. It's normal and it's challenging. And so, for example, through Instagram, we try and do that. We also have a lot of classes that we offer through Facebook, through YouTube. You can connect with us via LinkedIn if you like. We also promote some of our classes there. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the podcast that really you can find and download anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And finally, this is our contact information. Feel free to take a picture of the slide, but our website is www.caregivercenter.org. You can email us as well to scrc@caregivercenter.org if you're not sure, if you're just not sure who you need to speak to, you could just send us a general email there. Or you can call us toll free. It's that 800 number, or a regular number is the 858 number. We are available to answer your phone calls Monday through Friday from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. If you give us a call over the weekend or maybe on a holiday, we won't answer you, but we do have the option of you leaving a message and we will get back to you. Okay, but if not, maybe you're more of an email person, our email is right there as well. Well, I want to thank you all so much for for seeing our presentations. I hope that this is useful information for everyone. And just to let you know that we are here to serve you. We are here to help the caregivers. Thank you.